Welcome back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story going over the market and how it may be built on the expectations of a few, the salaries of even less, and the hopes of even less than that. I would love to hear your opinions, maybe the hopes of millions, depending on the perspective you take. But we'll jump into the article. You can get your experience from it if you go and read it. But I will try to give you the highlights. I want to know your opinions, though. So for our daily debate, is the bubble of AI, and yes, I affirmatively think it is a bubble, but will it cause the market to go tumbling down like the city of, I think that's how the song goes. I can't actually sing that well, but will it cause the market to go wobbly even further? So we're going to actually start with a quote in the middle from this article that comes from the New York Times, really trying to highlight some of the key issues that they see here in the middle of this crazy time. Quote, there are more wobbly labor market Jenga blocks than that comprising small companies, though. The federal government is estimating that it will eliminate roughly 300,000 jobs this year across the private sector. Companies of all sizes are offsetting increased costs in artificial intelligence-related investments by freezing hiring and trimming personnel. So they're highlighting that both the public and private sectors are having a hard time here. Quote, Wall Street is, and this is way down later in the article, quote, Wall Street is buying into the Taylor Tower hopes, at least based on consensus expectations compiled by Bloomberg. Economists estimate that the American annual GDP growth next year will be similar to this year's pace, and that earnings from the S&P 500 companies will expand next year, more than 12.5% above the year's estimated 11.5. So what could topple the tower? AI firms could hit constraints, such as energy needed to power data centers. They might not show as much revenue for their efforts as expected. Any number of catalysts, such as a stubbornly high inflation that limits consumption and slows the pace of the Fed rate cuts, or a Chinese technology bank breakthrough, could knock the stock market sideways. And when you think about that, that is extremely cheery-eyed, in my opinion. Now, am I an economist? Am I the greatest economist? No, of course not. But that doesn't mean I can't look at the market and at least make some understandable, I would say, predictions, but even that is too heavy-handed in language. Some understandable assumptions. I can make some starry-eyed analyses, which is when almost all of your GDP growth comes from one sector and one sector alone, let alone these companies being within the top 50. I believe actually most of them that have had the GDP gain this year are within the top 25 of companies. They're definitely within the top growers within the last few years, 2 years to be specific. It does beg the question, what is going to happen when they do not meet the expectations that are being lauded on them? There was actually a conversation in my office today, and some people were saying, well, hey, what's the difference between them and the dot-com boom? The dot-com boom, those people didn't have revenues. They didn't actually have income, and it was pure speculation. And that's a good point. These companies do indeed have revenues, though the main difference is these companies are acting like a Facebook, a Snapchat, an Instagram, all the Twitter. The point that they seem to make is they will have market effects or network effects when they get large enough. Well, one, AI is not necessarily inherently something that you share. That's why Sora is probably the greatest example of ChatGPT or OpenAI trying to get out of this model of simply being a one-on-one user experience, but rather something that is enjoyable by all. They're trying to get more users on it in order to share content, and I think that's probably their greatest attempt at actually bringing in more revenue and creating an ad revenue stream in the future. And that's how they can use the network effect there. But otherwise, they are not the Snapchats and the Facebooks where they can simply grow and make sure that they're in everybody's life to a large degree, and they're essential to the communication that we do as human beings. Snapchat is a great example of that. Snapchat is able to monetize and keep their stranglehold on picture sending because they have become so synonymous with sending images back and forth and being a part of everyday's communication. So many kids ask me, oh, hey, when I was working on campus, so many students asked me, hey, so you got Snap? Hey, can I contact you on Snap? It's like what WhatsApp is for some places over in Europe and other countries where they use it as the main form of communication. These kids, and yes, I say kids because they are younger than me, these kids use a lot of Snapchat in order to go back and forth and communicate with each other, just text each other. It seems out of vogue just to text people's numbers, and that's not to say that they don't do that. It's just that a lot of their group communications go through something like not WhatsApp, but what's the other one that I'm forgetting? Telegram. There are so many different places that they do this, and those market effects, those network effects, help those companies sustain their rise to the top through growth. And do the AI companies necessarily have this? By growing more popular and having more users, are they inherently getting more money out of it? Considering they're a subscription model, sure, but I know plenty of people around me that don't use the subscription model, ChatGPT, and a lot of people, the smartest thing that ChatGPT, OpenAI, did was allowing for corporate enterprise accounts and then having people use them in the workplace, and then maybe the people that get really used to having those higher usage limits that have access to more compute for all these powerful tasks when they go out on their own, when they go to a different place that doesn't have it, a smaller company, or simply for their everyday lives, they say, hey, actually, I really, really love that compute, that power that I had, and I'll pay for it. That's probably a smart move. But those gains are going to be hard to realize now, and I wonder how long the runway is in front of these companies. But what else is part of this toppling economy? What else needs to be analyzed here? I'll go to another quote in the middle of the article. Quote, according to the Federal Reserve data, the top 10% of American households by wealth owned more than 87% of the country's corporate equities and mutual fund shares as of mid-2025. Those households have benefited from the S&P 500 equity index that has gained more than 74% since November 2022. When ChatGPT emerged, according to the data from Bloomberg, the news and financial information company. They said that the range of households willing and able to spend is shrinking, with consumption increasingly dependent on the country's wealthiest households. That is a startling and scary fact. Do you want your entire economy, your consumer-based economy especially, to rely on less than 10% of the U.S. population? Does that make any sense? Is that actually who is going to be willing for a long time to pay these higher prices? There's a reason that they've reached the top 10%. Not everybody, but a large majority of them, at least if they've stayed there and maintained that percentage, then they have been crafty. They've been wise with their money. They're not spending too much of it. They may be willing to pay a little bit higher prices now, but at some point they will also become deeply adverse to these prices. And if you have an entire consumer economy backed up by this, and then also the stock market valuations are backed up and on the back of ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, which isn't technically publicly available, though there is lots of investment in the companies surrounding them. Remember, OpenAI is not open either, but Oracle's used as a semi-proxy. NVIDIA is used as a semi-proxy to estimate the value of these companies. Microsoft as well, because they're so heavily invested in them. They're the only ones, except for maybe a few large venture capital firms, that are able to actually hold quote-unquote shares in that private company. It's going to be a rough and tumble market if something is to go down. I'm not saying don't get invested. I'm not saying get out. I'm not saying double down. This is not financial advice. But remember, it is extremely important to keep a level head during any of this time. If you have a long-term perspective, I wouldn't say necessarily get in now, because you're going to take a while to recoup some of those top ends. But you can incur a little bit more risk. Then again, once again, not financial advice. I am not a certified financial advisor, a CFA, did not go through or get my Series 7 or anything like that. But I will tell you, be smart. do some research. Maybe there's some money to make on the back end. Maybe you can buy the dip. Maybe, what's it called? Wall Street Bets, I believe, on Reddit can give you a little bit of advice there. Once again, you do it at your own risk. But it's an interesting article. I would go give it a little bit longer of a read. It has a lot more to elucidate, a lot more to draw in. I've only sketched the outline, and they will give you the full color picture. So with that, if you want to read the article, it will be linked in the description below, like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the international news segment on Tuesday and Thursday, 6 and 6. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.